the premier sports talk radio, it's Tony's Takes.
Here we go.
We're back with another great episode of Tony's Takes right here live on YouTube. And unfortunately today I am alone in the studio. That's right, Jim is not with me. However, he will be calling in. We're going to do it over, I guess, the old COVID style of not in person, which is okay. We're going to have to deal with it. But don't worry, Jim will send in his picks and give us his takes on the Eagles in about, I'd say, 5 to 10 minutes. So hang on tight for that. He will be calling in, and the listeners will get to hear what he has to say. On today's episode of Tony's Takes, we're going to be talking about a lot of great things, from Tyler Herro being probably one of the more impressive players in the last 10 years to just show up in the playoffs. This Heat team, not only do they have Jimmy Butler, who's just an absolute baller, a guy who shows up to play every night, not only has Goran Dragic, a man who is almost forgotten in the NBA, rekindled his ability to play. And, you know, if you don't remember from the Suns, he was a good player. He had a lot of potential. Those Mike D'Antoni Suns were not bad teams. And Goran Dragic looked to be a upcomer in the new point guard style. I mean, he was a guy who could shoot from three, and everyone knew he could before it became fashionable 8 years ago, 6 years ago. And now, all of a sudden, it has come to fruition, his ability as a player, and he plays nicely with Tyler Herro, who's just absolutely great, and I'm really excited about those guys. So we're going to talk about the Heat and the Celtics in that regard. We are also going to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's what we're going to start off with today. The Philadelphia Eagles lose a game to the Los Angeles Rams. It was ugly. It was embarrassing. Not as embarrassing as the Washington Redskins, the Washington football team, but it was still a pretty embarrassing loss. And once again, it was on the shoulders of Carson Wentz, who couldn't seem to score at any point in the game. So we're going to talk about the Eagles. And we're going to stick with that Philadelphia mentality of we just keep losing with the Philadelphia Phillies, who have slid out of a playoff spot all of a sudden. Just when you think the Eagles couldn't make Philadelphia sports worse, just when you think the Sixers couldn't make Philadelphia sports worse, and I know the last 3 episodes of Tony's Takes has just been Philadelphia lamenting the whole time, but I had a lot of upside on this Philadelphia Phillies team, and yet they still came up short. How can that happen? How can an organization like the Phillies not invest in a bullpen going into this season and then expect us to let everything be hunky-dory and then bring in Joe Girardi and say, do something different than Gabe Kapler? And then he goes and does the same thing as Gabe Kapler, and he loses a playoff spot. And I don't know if we're going to get it back. I'm going to go into that. But let's start with the Eagles. As I promised, we'd start with the Eagles. There's just a lot of Philadelphia thoughts going through my head right now, especially without the NBA having many teams playing. It's pretty much just been all Philly sports in the NFL especially. This past Sunday, I was sitting and watching the game. I was sitting at a restaurant outside. And as I watched the game and I watched the Eagles go scoreless for the first quarter, the first 2 quarters, pretty much not scoring, not putting up a fight until the very end of the second quarter, it became apparent that Carson Wentz is the problem. Now, I did say last week, and Jimmy and I talked about it, Carson Wentz, yeah, of course he was the problem. He's got to shake it off. First game, not a lot of preseason game, if no preseason game has actually occurred for any of these football teams. And so when I see the Raiders play and I see the Raiders go 2-0, I think, oh, okay, maybe that's because they're catching bad teams off guard, except they went and beat the Saints. And I see the Eagles come out and I think, oh, they're going to play well. They're going to do fine. They're going to come out of it. They just They were up on a division rival, 17 points. Things fell apart. They haven't played at all. Guys could have gotten gassed for the second half. The Washington football team is a defensive team, and maybe they were just stronger at the end because when you play through your defense and your defense is dominating a whole game, maybe it's just easier for new teams, right? Defense travels. That's always been the statement. And apparently defense can bring you back into a game. Who would have thought? And I thought anything is possible. That was clearly a possibility for the Eagles. Just the first game's rust. It wouldn't have been an issue any other way. And then I saw them play the Los Angeles Rams in those nice, beautiful new uniforms. And when I saw Carson Wentz struggle to make outlet passes, when I saw the defense struggle to get anything going outside of the running game, which turned out to be very good, and I was very happy. Miles Sanders played pretty decently, especially as the second quarter came on. You know, he was a big reason why the Eagles were able to crawl back in any form or fashion. It's because Miles Sanders is a very good running back. I think any Eagles fans would be happy with him. And he's a very good asset to have next to Carson Wentz, even though you could complain about his blocking maybe. But Carson Wentz is on such shaky ground right now because the game against the Rams proved the first game of the season against Washington, that wasn't just a shake the rust off situation with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is in a bad situation in terms of being compared to the rest of the league and the rest of the quarterbacks who are in his age group. People like Mahomes, people like Jared Goff, who he had to play. Guys like that in his group are starting to pull away from him. And that Super Bowl season might have been something that was just a one-time deal. And now we have this big contract for Carson Wentz. He is still unproven since the injury. In fact, he's only 500 since the injury. His decision-making skills are getting worse. The team's not getting better any day soon. And his contract for the next couple years, he's $3 million next year, $18 million in 2022, $18 million again in 23, $21 million in 2024. And that doesn't include bonuses of $8 million, $10 million, $5 million, $5 million. Those are his bonuses throughout the rest of the years coming up, the next 5 years. Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles are at a crossroad because of this. His contract's only going to get bigger, folks. It's only going to get bigger. And if he doesn't improve and his peers continue to outplay him, there's going to be a lot of unrest in Philadelphia. There's no doubt about it. The drive-by media, the fake, no, I don't want to say fake, but the media of Philadelphia, the real media, the 94.1s and the 97.5s, they're not going to stand for it. And the ESPNs, get a load. This is Mike Greenberg on ESPN, I think it was yesterday or today, talking about Carson Wentz. This is just the beginning of what the media is going to start with Carson Wentz. They don't care about facts. Sometimes they name facts, but really they just cause a narrative. And if the narrative gets away from the Philadelphia Eagles, if they can't get fans to calm down and show, hey, maybe those were just two bad games. If they don't get ahead of this now, I'm going to explain after I play this clip why it might just get worse. This is Mike Greenberg on First Take.
Coach being put off by the way the question was phrased, but here's a different one. Through 2 weeks of this season, who has been the worst quarterback in the NFL? Well, a pretty compelling case could be made that the answer is Carson Wentz. No one has thrown more interceptions. No one has been sacked more times, and no one has made more off-target throws. Since his team was up 17-0 on Washington, the Eagles have scored touchdowns on 2 of 21 drives. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's the banged-up offensive line. Guess what? You're wrong. Our analytics actually have the Eagles 5th in the league in pass protection. The problem has actually been the internal clock and decision-making. Week 1, Wentz took 8 sacks and threw the ball away 0 times. Of his 20 off-target throws this year, 15 have come from a clean pocket. This cannot be described as other people's fault. The truth is this. In 2017, Wentz was an MVP frontrunner before he got hurt. On a team so good it won the Super Bowl without him.
That is Mike Greenberg. That's not Angelo Cataldi. That is not Mike Missinelli. That's national media guys talking about our Philadelphia Eagles already stirring the pot when it comes to the fan base and trying to get us riled up over Carson Wentz. Now, sure, they're talking about facts. and we're going to go to Jimmy soon. Jimmy's on the line. But we're talking about facts and stirring up a narrative again about Carson Wentz before the season even starts. We're only 2 games in, no preseason, none of that. And ESPN's already starting with all of this garbage, I would say. Now, Wentz, we can criticize Wentz, but it's going to be harder for Wentz to stick in Philadelphia when not only is Philadelphia media challenging him, now we have national media challenging him. That doesn't make it any easier for a guy like Carson, who is getting paid big bucks now. He's a big boy, getting paid big bucks. We're going to go to Jim. Jim's on the line. Jimmy, how are you doing? Hopefully the folks can hear you.
Hey, Tony, I'm doing well. I hope, do I sound all right?
You sound perfect.
Yeah, you're making some good points there. I think that this national attention is bringing to light a lot of what we feel as Eagles fans is a major issue that's going on with this team.
So what do you think of my thoughts on the national? It's dangerous that the national media is now talking about Carson Wentz. It's not a good thing. It's one thing for Philadelphia fans to be talking about Carson Wentz. It's one thing for local radio to be talking about Carson Wentz. That's a normal occurrence in everyday Philadelphia sports. Everyone's got to deal with it. The pressure becomes a lot harder when now Stephen A. Smith is taking pot shots at you on First Take at 10 a.m. every morning, and it can easily turn to that because Philadelphia is one of the most major markets in America when it comes to sports. We do get coverage on national media.
Yeah, I do think that this now puts the pressure on 2 different sides, right? So it puts the pressure on Carson. He's got to perform. So if he doesn't live up to what I guess this pressure that the national media is giving him, then it's really, really going to look bad. But then it also puts pressure on, the front office to make sure that, they've made the right decision here and that Carson is the guy. You have Jalen Hurts coming in for a couple of plays just as a decoy this last week. So, there's a lot coming up about this backup quarterback that you're probably going to see him played this year, even if it's just for 1 or 2 snaps a game. He's definitely going to be on the field.
I'm just looking at the chat, Jim. Shout out to all the people in the chat right now. If you're listening to us on YouTube, we really do appreciate it. And Jim's on the line, co-host Jim. First of all, Stephen Daniels saying fire Howie. I mean, I'm about to talk about the management aspect of this because this team is going to come to a crossroads. If Carson Wentz can improve, and as Mike Greenberg said later in the quote I just played, this Eagles team won a Super Bowl by beating the Patriots and holding Tom Brady back after he didn't punt the ball once in the Super Bowl. That was it. Those Eagles beat a Patriots team that was playing the best Patriots football you will ever see, and they still beat them because they literally assembled with Howie Roseman the best defense, the best offensive line, the best running core in football, and gave both Carson Wentz and Nick Foles a silver platter in which the Super Bowl would be served to them regardless of what would happen. It was one of the better defenses in the league. If Carson is the guy you go with now and you don't trade him, because you're going to have to trade him now over any other time because he is going to diminish in value if he doesn't improve, and the contract is so bloated that you're stuck with him until you can buy him out in 4 years, or you get rid of him now and take what you can get before the market value really tanks on him. If you don't get rid of him now, you must, literally, it will be all on the general management and the coaching staff to script the best plays every week, to get the best players every year, to draft the best players every year, to negotiate the most efficient contracts possible. Because that is the only way this team will win, is when everyone else picks up the pace and carries what is, and if he is, an amateur quarterback. Jim?
Yeah, you know what I find odd, and you've talked about this a few times, whether on the air or off the air. You talk about how drafting with this team has been really, really bad lately. And I find it so odd that it's so parallel to how the coaching staff was, that we lost Frank Reich, who was a playmaker. Well, the front office, we lost Joe Douglas, and he's with the Jets now. That's your team. And it's funny because he was the guy he was the draft guy. He was the one that came up with the draft board every year. And now you could see over the last 2 years, the drafting really hasn't been sufficient and this team is suffering because of that. You can see on this field they're just not a collective team. They just look like a couple of stars with intermingled with guys that just really have no direction of what they're doing.
And I want to, one of the listeners in the chat, Stephen Brownwell, says, Brownell, sorry, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name right, said the O-line looked good. And that's what Mike Greenberg said in his quote. The O-line is actually not that bad. They're older, but they're holding the defense, the opposing defenses to a decent rate, a league average at the minimum rate. Okay, sure, you could say that they're not drafting wide receivers, but the defense hasn't improved as much as you would like it to. I know last year the corners were a big issue, but just because the O-line's holding up now doesn't mean it's going to hold up in 2 more years when you're still stuck with Wentz. And even if you have the 5th best O-line in the whole league, Wentz is still underperforming as of right now. Jim, is it because of rust? I said this earlier in the monologue. Is it because the Eagles are just rusty? Or is
it
Wentz?
Could be. I mean, not having a preseason and not being able to have practices. I mean, you see teams look like they are rusty. It's not just the Eagles that are out there that look off, but something feels off with this team, and it doesn't seem like it's just preseason and limited practices. There's something wrong with this team fundamentally, and I can't put my finger on it just yet. Maybe it's the defense, or maybe it's Carson. I'm not sure, but something has to change either with the coaching staff or with the front office. They need to do better.
I agree. I don't know where we go from here. I think the Eagles are at a crossroad. I think, and this is my last point before we go to the picks, Jim, because those picks are important for this week. We're tied. My last point about the Eagles is this. They're at a crossroads. You get rid of Wentz now, right? I like Wentz. I think he's a stand-up guy. I think he's a decent locker room guy, but when you underperform, you do lose the locker room. It's either you get rid of Wentz now, or you're an organization, you step up, you say, this is our guy, we're sticking with our guy, we're not going to trash him no matter what any of the media says, and we're going to stick with him, and we're going to live with the consequences. We're going to be adults, we're going to live with the consequences. Or you trade him and you say, we're going to be adults, this was a business transaction, we don't think there's a future, we wish Carson Wentz all the luck. But you can't sell him to the Wolves, you can't say we're sticking with him because we owe him all this money, it's all his fault, he's worth all this money, he's underperforming. If you want to save his career, you got to stick with the guy. You got to have his back. Belichick never sold Brady down river. If he knew he was great, he always vouched for him. And that's what, if Doug Peterson wants to be great, if he wants to be great like Andy Reid, then he has to stay with his guy. He has to stay with this guy. Jim, let's go to the picks. We're tied this week. We're both 3-3. Jim, I think you got the spread correctly, but the over-under wrong, and I was the inverse. I got the over-under right, and you got the spread, and I got the spread wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
Yeah, that looks right. 3-1, both of us.
3-1 tied. I thought I was going to pull the lead over you. Okay, so for today's bet, we're going to take, this is the Eagles and the Bengals. For those who are just listening to Tony's Takes for the first time, or don't remember this segment, me and Jim are taking the FanDuel money line. We are not sponsored, by the way, and it would be lovely if they did sponsor us. The FanDuel money lines and the spreads and the over-unders, whichever one you want. We get to pick 2 of the bets. We usually stick with the spread and the over-under. And we pick 2 bets, and then we ride with it. Me and Jim are tied 3-1, so if I had picked my bets, I'd be up right now. Jim, do you want to start? Do you have, for the listeners, let me just give it to them real quick. Eagles are -6. Cincinnati Bengals are +6 on the spread. And then the total over-under is 46.5. Joe Burrow is the quarterback for the Bengals. He can sling the ball. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bengals +6. I'm not loving the Eagles against the spread this year. I just feel like that every single game so far, they've been a little overrated. And I'm kind of rooting for the tie for this game because I think that would be a perfect way to start off this season. So if it's a tie, the Bengals +6, that's what I'm going with. And then for the over-under, this is hard. I think I'm actually going to take the under again. I'm thinking maybe it's like a 20-20 kind of game.
Okay, Jim, I'm going to break the bad news to you. The Eagles, every game the Eagles have played so far, too, the over has hit. That's how I'm making my money right now. The over is hitting. So while you're taking the under at 46.5, I'm going to take the over. I think Joe Burrow proved last week he can score. This team's not that bad, and the Browns defense probably a little bit better than the Eagles defense. The question is, can the Eagles score on the Bengals? I think they can. The Bengals defense isn't that good either. I'm really picturing the scene where either two teams can't score at all, like they just can't get the spark, or the opposite is the defenses are just so bad that they somehow walk into the end zone constantly, which I think might be more true than we want it to be. I'm taking the over at 46.5. I'm going to ride with that. I've been taking the over all year. I'm going to stick with it just as a differentiator from you when I take the lead. And I'm going to take the spread with you at Bengals +6. I think Burrow gets his first win and Eagles fans freak out. That's where I think we're going to be at.
Oh, no. Well, I'll tell you this. I looked at the Eagles versus Cincinnati historically, and we are 2-7-1 against them historically.
There we go.
It's not a good outlook.
Those are the sabermetrics right there. That's what you want to see if you're taking it with us. Stephanie Daniels takes the over as well. 24 for the Bengals. Yeah, this is going to be. Oh, Stephen Brownwell says Joe Burrow is deep balling past our safeties. Will score 24, Eagles 31, and the over. Okay, we got some fans in the chat taking the Eagles on the spread, but I think everyone likes the over. Jim, you might be in the minority on this one.
Yeah, I am, and I know that seems a little odd, especially with Joe Burrow. I mean, they've been doing empty sets with him, having five wideouts and everything. But I don't know. You're going to have a missed game every once in a while, and I think that this might be a game where he kind of falls off, and maybe the Eagles' defense tightens up. Jim Schwartz gets after them, but who knows? Like I said, I haven't seen the Eagles score more than 20 points this season, and it's going to be a rough one, that's for sure. The Bengals and the Eagles historically, it's bad on our side.
Jim, let me lift up your hopes a little bit. You ready? And I know you want to stick on the phone just a little bit to talk about this next subject. For those who are listening to Tony's Takes, we really do appreciate it here on YouTube. Usually Jim, who's on the phone right now, is in person in the studio. Unfortunately, certain circumstances didn't allow that for this week. Hopefully Jim can come back sooner. But thanks for listening to Tony's Takes here on YouTube. We also do Apple Podcasts if you can't listen to the whole episode. So if you follow us on Apple Podcasts, make sure to subscribe, write reviews. Reviews get read on the show. And if you're listening to us on YouTube and you're a first-time listener, really do appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to the show. We're up to 17 subscribers, and we hit almost 47 views in last week's episode. So that was really exciting. The viewership is growing exponentially per episode. I don't know how long we can keep that up, but really do appreciate all the listeners out there listening to us on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, following us on Twitter, being active in the Tony's Takes community. And if you couldn't tell, got a new logo. Finally put Jimmy D on the logo where he deserves to be. Jim, the reason why I want to keep you on the phone is because I want to talk about the Celtics Heat. And hopefully this is why it cheers you up. Because the Celtics look like they are dead in the water. Eric Spoelstra has proven to be the better coach. In my opinion, he always has been the best coach in the NBA for the last 6 years. No one's given him any credit because he's been sitting patiently in Miami, waiting just for one superstar to show up, aka Jimmy Butler, and one great draft pick away from clearly winning because they were always a 500 team with a decent cast of characters. Tyler Herro is that guy. What were you thinking? Were you watching the game last night?
Yeah, I was watching the game. The kid blew my mind how well he was playing. He seemed to read the defenders really well, and he's just on fire. I mean, you couldn't stop him. It was one of those games where you could tell that he was in the zone, and nobody was really going to stop him that night.
Scoring inside, scoring outside, little faders, little floaters. The guy did it all. It all.
I'm so surprised by his rebounding ability. You don't really see that in guards, and that's so impressive. Every game I see, he'll grab 6 or 7 boards.
He wasn't that good in college. Don't get it twisted, folks listening out there. Tyler Herro was decent in college. In regards to the rest of the NCAA, he was okay. He did start at Kentucky, but nowhere was he yeah, I'm going to lead the Miami Heat past the Boston Celtics to the NBA Finals. Now, they haven't gotten to the NBA Finals just yet. Let's not get too excited. Let's not try to be overzealous about the series because the Denver Nuggets have proven you can come back from 3-1 twice in the same year in the playoffs. But Tyler Herro, I think he's here to stay. I think Herro is here to stay. He is that good. For those who aren't looking at the box score, he was -4 for the plus minus after going 14 for 21 on 67% from the field, 5 for 10 from 3. Those are Steph Curry numbers, Jim. Those are Steph Curry numbers.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And, first off, I called that this Heat team was going to be so good, right? I said that they were going to win in 5.
You've been picking them. I can't deny it.
that it happens. Maybe I should start going and betting like crazy, but I really think that this team's awesome. I think that they mesh well together. I do get a little worried about Iggy out there, but then he proves me wrong as soon as I say something. But I was saying how old he was looking last night, and then my brother came out and he kind of rooting him on. You know, this team is just built for success. They're built to play with only 7 guys. I can't believe that they're gone this far. I remember at the beginning of the season when I still had Sixers tickets and all. I was booing the Heat when they came back with Jimmy Butler, and that same team that I watched get beat by the Sixers is now on their way to the finals.
Yeah, you picked them, right? I'm not gonna deny you on that one. You get the credit for that. You've been riding them since day one of when we started this show live on YouTube. That's 3 weeks. I give you 3 weeks worth of credit. This team is really good. Team's really good. Anything else stand out for you? I know that you had mentioned to me in private Duncan Robinson out there, underrated player.
Yeah. It won't really show up in the stats. He doesn't score like a lot of baskets. He was scoreless last game, except for the free throws that he made. But he's able to play really good defense against the Heat. He's a body that stands out, and I think that he really helps kind of clog up the lane for the Celtics. And I think that he's just, I mean, he's +2 on the plus minus. I think he's just a good team player. He's a role player that fits in, and he'll play a good 20 minutes, good hard 20 minutes for the team.
Bench players are everything. And you know what's nice about the Heat is, compared to other teams in the playoffs, this Heat team's not afraid to go 6 or 7 or 8 deep. They have the players to do that, right? I'm not afraid to play Kelly Olynyk if I have to play Kelly Olynyk. He's not a bad player. I'm not afraid to play, Udonis Haslem for 4 or 5 minutes if I want a tough guy out there for 4 or 5 minutes. That gives just some rest to some of the players that you're mentioning, like Bam Adebayo. He played 40 minutes last night. That's a lot for him. On any other night, I'd feel comfortable putting Udonis Haslem in for 3 or 4 minutes to give Bam at least a little less time to rest. But I think that getting a 3-1 win was kind of important for the Heat, and that's why they went with a shorter 8-man rotation today, or yesterday, technically.
I think it's crazy how many 20-point double-doubles Bam Adebayo has put up in this postseason. They've put him up. I think he's having similar numbers to like Shaquille O'Neal. It's crazy that these rookies and young players, they're shining stars in an NBA that kind of needs the next evolution, the next generation. And you've mentioned that before. It seems like this Heat team, even with Kendrick Nunn, who didn't play, I mean, he was an all-rookie player this year, and Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo, all these young guys they're tremendous players, and it seems like they're going to be the next faces of the game.
Yeah, and Bam Adebayo, you mentioned 20 points. He had 12 rebounds, 2 steals, 4 assists. I mean, 4 assists for Bam Adebayo. He's leading the team in assists. That's pretty crucial. Who would have thought?
For your center.
Yeah, he's like Nikola Jokic out there. I also want to mention this about the players, and you said the young guys, and I like this topic of young players. If you're Coach Calipari and you're sitting at home watching these guys play, aren't you feeling pretty accomplished? Aren't you feeling pretty good about yourself? Don't you think, when I go to recruit, I can point to Jamal Murray. I can point to Tyler Herro. I can point to Karl Anthony Towns, and I can point to Derek. Not Derek, but Booker, Devin Booker. I can
What
point
about Nerlens?
Yes, Nerlens Noel. Who could have forgotten about him? But in all reality, in all truth, Jim, if you're Calipari, you're sitting pretty right now. These guys are good, and they're the face of the league. More so than Coach K's guys.
Not a bad look. That's definitely true.
Yeah, I really do think Calipari, who I was doubtful of with the one and dones, I think he's maybe come out on top. And these guys are good. These players are good. There is no doubt about it. Jim, let's talk about the Phillies before we wrap up today's show. We're going to keep it nice and shorter today just because Jim's on the studio, and I don't want it just to be a monologue of me. I asked Jim to come into the studio so we could bounce ideas off each other. I think the show is better when there's two people. I know I like my monologues. We all know we love Tony's monologues, but it is a better show, always has been, when there's two people in the studio. So, Jim, I want to talk about two more things. Billy Donovan picks the Chicago Bulls. I think it's a great pick for him. I think it's a place where you can make the Bulls a more relevant team going forward. And that's a nice thing for Chicago. It's a city that needs help with regards to bringing the Bulls back to prosperity. I want to see the Bulls do well. It's kind of like football. When the Raiders do well, football feels a little bit more fun. It's fun to have a villain. Now, the Bulls aren't technically a villain, but it's fun to have Chicago, a big major city. Teams have to go there, play in Chicago. It's just like the Knicks. The NBA is better when the Knicks are better because you got to go to Madison Square Garden. It's a big city team. It's a lot of fun to see. Michael Jordan did play there. I really hope that Billy Donovan takes this team to a level where they're just as good as when they had Derrick Rose, because that was a lot of fun. That was good. That's the last time they were that good. Do you think now that Billy Donovan has picked the Bulls that we're stuck as Sixers fans with Mike D'Antoni as our future coach?
Yeah, I think we are stuck.
And he has preference. They mentioned, I think we read that in the article last week, Mike D'Antoni has preference to be the 76ers head coach. I like Mike D'Antoni. But, Jim, I think I texted you or you texted me. They want to give up a pick. Do you want to explain that a little bit more?
Oh, yeah. There was a quick article that said that there was a possibility that the Sixers would already be leaning towards trading either Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons to the Golden State Warriors. And I was just floored by that. Just to have Mike D'Antoni, a guy who he's never won.
He's never won.
And we have defensive-minded players, and he's like historically a bad defensive coach. I don't really think that this pick makes any sense as a coach, and then to kind of lure him into coaching by mentioning that we would possibly trade one of our stars to Golden State, it doesn't feel right to me, and I don't like the pick at all.
I don't like that you're enticing a guy to come into Philadelphia and you're willing to trade guys for an unproven coach. That's a major problem for me. These two players are good. If you don't think they're going to work out, that's fine. That's a move that the general manager makes. That's not a move or a decision that a coach who has failed many years in a row with players who are better than what we have, James Harden, Chris Paul, they're good players. They have accomplished more than Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons have as of right now. Those guys have gone to conference finals. Those guys have played on really good teams. James Harden has been to the NBA Finals with the Thunder. He is not a bad player. Don't get it twisted out there. And you're willing to trade him, or trade our guys, the Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. I'm sorry, I'm not clear enough on that one. You're willing to trade those two players for a coach who is clearly unproven. He is unproven. It is embarrassing. If I was the owner of this team and that leaked out, that I'm willing to get rid of guys for a coach, I'd be embarrassed. Because you don't even know if a new system can work, and you're doing it off a guy you haven't hired yet. It is a different thing if we go all off season and Mike D'Antoni goes, I'm in practice, I can't get these guys to work together, it's a problem, trade one of them, come whatever. If the NBA started in January, trade them by March, because it's just not working out with my offense, and we're just going to have to change it up. But we don't even know that. And you're willing to trade a guy for the word or on the word of a guy and his scheme, which hasn't worked in the NBA yet. Show me the ring. Where is his ring?
And to think, they're trying to lure him here, even though he already coached here back in 2015. That's what gets me, is they're so set on a guy that they might just be a little familiar with, and they're just going with the safe pick. And I don't know if it's really a safe pick. I really think that this is a risk, and I don't believe that it's going to pay off in any way.
Yeah, and it's just so disheartening that Billy Donovan, I don't think he was given real consideration. Once Mike D'Antoni was gone, I think Billy Donovan knew he was like, I'm just not for Philadelphia. I think Billy Donovan's a better coach, and he would be better here in Philadelphia with our guys. He's a New Yorker, fits well with this team. And he was turned off by the fact that he knew at least that Mike D'Antoni was a favored candidate. Because why? He was an assistant coach for the guy who got fired already. It's one thing if it's Monty Williams, who's proven himself with the Suns and turns out to be a pretty good disciple of Brett Brown. But Mike D'Antoni's had his own shtick. And
I don't like any of this.
Yeah.
I'm seeing stuff from Bleacher Report now that John Clark's talking about possibly James Harden could be lured here with the Mike D'Antoni pick. I don't like any of this stuff. I think it's all smoke that's getting blown up the fans. What's, and I don't like it.
Yeah, remember this is a kid show, Jimmy, family show.
Yeah. Sorry, my bad.
No. I'm just giving you crap. No, I totally agree. Don't give me smoke and mirrors. Don't give me a mirage. Give me the real thing. Be honest with me. Give me a real good coach. And I texted you this, Jeb. If it was Greg Popovich, if it was, why am I blanking on Jackson's first name? Phil Jackson. If it was Phil Jackson, okay, I'll listen to you. You've proven something. You've got rings for every finger on your hand. Then I'll listen to you. But Mike D'Antoni? How many rings? I'm looking at a bare hand. I'm looking at only his wedding ring. That's the only ring I see on that hand. I don't even know if he's married.
I believe so.
Can we get a fact check on that one?
Yeah, Laurel D'Antoni.
Thank you.
Faithful guy, 34 years married.
See? Only ring on his hand. Wedding ring. Okay, Jim. Last one. We're going to go to the Phils. I know, awkward pauses in between because we're on the phone. Can't see each other. People don't know in the studio, facial cues, everything. But let's go to the Phils. I went on ESPN and they were at 49% probability to make the playoffs. I have a hot take for you, Jim. I think DIDI Gregorius may be a more valuable offensive player than Real Muto. This guy hits in big situations. I've watched him hit grand slams. I've watched him hit home runs with two people on base. He always hits big when there are guys in front of him. And when Bryce Harper gets walked 3 times in one night, DD makes sure to take all that he can. He gets greedy and he scores. Is DD as important? He's a very good batter, and I've been very impressed with him over the last week and a half as Bryce has slumped outside of the one home run he had.
I don't know if he's more valuable than JT Realmuto. But I will say this. The Phillies can get by in the future without JT as a catcher. I don't know if they can get by in the future without DD as a shortstop.
Why?
So you have JT Realmuto. He's a silver slugger catcher. I don't know if anybody can fill that role, but it looks like Andrew Knapp is hitting really well, and it looks like his pick is paying off. And I think that, first off, I don't think Gene is as good of a shortstop as Didi is. So I really think that his defense is valuable. I think that Didi is a better performer when we need him in the batter's box. So, I think that we can get by with Andrew Knapp. I think that signing Didi would be better than JT, but I don't I don't know if I wouldn't say he's a better offensive threat than JT or Realmuto. JT is a silver slugger. He's earned that. And I think that his overall offensive ability is better than DiDi's. But I think that DiDi is a better sign.
I don't know, man. DiDi steps up to the plate. I feel confident when he's up at the plate. I don't know. Maybe it's just recency bias. I've only seen DiDi perform. Maybe it's because I'm not watching. I should be watching every single play of every game. But every time I do have the TV on or I'm sitting at a bar or something and I'm looking at the Phillies, the dude always shows up big when he walks up to the plate. I go, I think we've got it. I think we're going to score. I just get this feeling, emotional feeling. We're going to score. It's DiDi's up at the plate. Sweet.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that signing him is more important than JT. Don't get that twisted. But I don't think that he's a better offensive threat than JT. Maybe JT has a little bit of a down year this year, but I still think that JT has shown it over and over again historically that he is a threat, and he's the best hitting catcher in the NL year in and year out.
Okay, I'll have to take your word for it. I'm not going to argue on that. I mean, I'm not saying that JT's a bad baseball player, right? I understand. We've talked about it on the show. We need him. We need both of them. I mean, they fill out we do have a solid hitting lineup. I mean, you've said it, I've said it. Everyone plays a part, and it's nice to see them all play well. And it really just comes down to pitching, because we score 9 on the Nats and still lose, or 8 on the Nats and still lose. That can't happen, right? That's not a batting issue. That's a pitching issue and a defensive issue by far. Jim, do the Phillies make the playoffs? This is what we're gonna leave the viewers off on. What I'm gonna leave you off on. I think the Phillies still make the playoffs. I think they beat the Rays 3 times. What do you think?
They have to win 3 games, right?
They have
to. There's no way that they make the playoffs without winning all 3 games.
Unless the other teams just don't win. That's the only other way. And that's unlikely.
I'm leaning on the side of they're going to break our hearts. They kind of let us down the whole season, and I don't think that that's going to change. I hope that you're right, but I'm going to go with the other way than you. I think I'm going to disagree, and I think we're done.
Oh, Jim, you're really going to break my heart. I'm going to have to leave you on that one.
I mean, the Rays are the 1 seed in the AL, man. Unless they're going to just coast through our 3 games and let us win.
Well, we definitely won't face their best pitchers. That's for sure. Right? They've clinched everything. They're going to rest their best pitchers. That's our only hope. That doesn't mean that their batters aren't going to take any mercy on us either, though. That's for sure. All right, Jim, thanks for calling in. We do appreciate it. Hopefully you'll be in the studio next week. I have my fingers crossed.
All right, Tony. Yeah, me too. I hope so.
Good. I'll talk to you later, Jim. Thanks.
All right, thanks for having me.
That was Jimmy, folks. Always nice to have him on the show. Usually he's here in person on Tony's Takes. Breaking news, Pac-12 to play 7-game slate starting in November. Ooh, that is big news. This was talked about, the Pac-12 this just in. They will be playing a football schedule in November. They're thinking they're going to make it in the playoff for college football, but I don't think they're going to, because they're only going to play 7 games, and none of the Pac-12 teams are even good enough to get into the college playoffs. So it might have been 7 games too late, kind of flip-floppy on everything like that. Want to thank everyone for listening to Tony's Takes. It's really been a pleasure. Jimmy wasn't being able into the studio, but he gave us some good takes for a good half hour. The Eagles were not looking good, folks. They're not looking good, but I have faith. I bet against them, but I'd rather them win than my bets hit for the Eagles. Let's just put it like that. Really, I don't, even though if I take the picks against them, I'd really rather see the Eagles win. It just makes it a more enjoyable experience, that's for sure. Other than that, thank you for listening to Tony's Takes. We're going to wrap it up today's show just a little bit early, but that's okay. I want to appreciate everyone in the chat today. It was a pretty good, active chat. A lot of good takes in there. I'm looking at it. Someone said that I hit my head. Could have been, and that was when I said DiDi might have been more valuable than JT. Who knows? We might see if the Phillies make the playoffs. I'm thinking DiDi plays a big role in scoring, and that's for sure. If you're listening to us on YouTube, we're live right now. Make sure to subscribe to the show. And when you do subscribe, hit the notification bell twice. Got to hit that bell twice. That way you get notified when we go live every Thursday, 7 p.m., right here on YouTube. In addition to that, make sure to follow us on Twitter at Tonys_takes. Once again, that's at Tonys_takes. You see it in the ticker running on the screen. That's a great way to get new information about the show. You'll get the links to when we're going live. I share interesting once in a while. I'll share an interesting article, or I'll tweet out a hot take before the show. That's always a good time. Make sure to follow us there so you get all the newest information. In addition, jump into the mailbag. The mailbag has been empty, and I would love for someone to mail the mailbag with a hot take, and we'll cover it on the show. We really want interaction with the fans. That's why we're on YouTube. Email the mailbag, tonystakes.1851@gmail.com. tonystakes.1851@gmail.com. Please do it, because I love to read your emails, love to get your thoughts. It will be read on the show. You email the mailbag, it gets read on the show. That's a Tony guarantee. And I think that's it. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Hopefully Jimmy will be in the studio next week, and let's hope that the Eagles win and the Phillies win and the Sixers make the right choice with the coach. Really do appreciate everyone spending time tonight with us right here on Tony's Takes. Look forward to seeing everyone next week right here on YouTube. Thanks for listening.
The premier sports talk radio, it's Tony's Takes.
Here we go.